regular chairman's update. Interesting week this week, of course, as I've been saying for the past several months, this year is busy. A lot of political activity going on through multiple channels, lawsuits, initiatives, and of course the midterm elections, the primary the first week of August and the general election the first week of November this year. This week there was an interesting bit in the news that draws attention to specifically one of the initiatives we'll be considering this year, and to some extent to some of the other initiatives. What happened was, in Longview, Washington, the superintendent of the Longview School District was arrested for withholding information about an alleged sexual assault and some sexual misbehavior, bad behavior, amongst students in her school district, and some of the episodes involving, allegedly, some of the adult employees of the school district. The superintendent was arrested by the Longview, Washington Police Department for withholding this information and breaking the law as her duty as what's called a mandatory reporter. Certain people in the healthcare and education professions are required by state law to report allegations of sexual misconduct or sexual abuse or even sexual harassment in certain situations to law enforcement. They're mandatory reporters, it's called. They are mandated by the law to report these things to law enforcement. It was an interesting case, and it's still very much pending, that the superintendent believed rhetoric put forth particularly by the state school superintendent, the elected statewide official Chris Reichel, and to some extent the current governor, Mr. Ferguson, that school districts, school employees, teachers and administrators and school superintendents had the right to withhold information, particularly information of a sexual or gender identity nature, from parents and from other authorities. And so this superintendent in Longview was kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. The law says that in a situation involving any sexual misconduct, she's a mandatory reporter to law enforcement, and yet the rhetoric of Mr. Reichel and Mr. Ferguson tells her, no. If there's activity of a sexual nature, you do not have to tell parents. You do not have to tell law enforcement. In fact, the children are your children. They're not the parents' children. They're not the family's children. This is the danger of the unlawful and hysterical rhetoric that Chris Reichel and Bob Ferguson used to try to undermine parents' rights. And this superintendent in Longview, Washington, was caught between their hysterical rhetoric and the law, which said she did have to report this sexual misconduct. So it'll be interesting to see how the superintendent's case plays out. I expect that her defense of withholding the information will be, well, Reichel and Ferguson have told us we don't need to report private sexual matters to law enforcement. Now, they'll try to make the difference between a child's sexual persona, child's gender identity, and allegations of sexual misconduct. But I would expect that the superintendent in Longview is going to say, well, it was all kind of a blur. There were elements of both in these situations. And I expect that she will say, the superintendent, will say that she was trying to manage and handle a complicated situation in a way that comports with the rhetoric of Mr. Reichel and Mr. Ferguson. But I don't think it's going to work because the law on being a mandated reporter, someone who's got to report sexual misconduct to law enforcement, is clear, and the rhetoric of Reichel and Ferguson is not. It's cynical and it's political posturing. So I think the Longview school superintendent's in a world of trouble down there. But again, the case is still working its way through the courts, and we'll see how it turns out. Now, what does this have to do with our public policy this year? Well, one of the initiatives that we're considering this year, one of the two that's already guaranteed to be on the ballot in November, is IL 26-001. That's the initiative to restore the Parents' Bill of Rights in Washington. The Parents' Bill of Rights is largely about disclosing, reporting information to parents of kids primarily in school environments, to some degree in healthcare or medical contexts. And what the Parents' Bill of Rights says is that the parents need to be notified, parental notification, of any significant thing, activity, issue, problem, disciplinary measure involving their child. And it's about information. And it would clear up this poor school superintendent who broke the law on mandatory reporting. It would clear up some of the law in this area and certainly blunt the rhetoric, not law, but the rhetoric that cynical politicians like Reichel and Ferguson use. Now, what happened was the Parents' Bill of Rights was passed into law by initiative a few years ago, and I was deeply involved in that personally. I drafted that initiative. Then the legislature, just one session later, 1 year later, gutted the same initiative that had passed into law the previous year. Didn't remove all of it, the Parents' Bill of Rights, from law, but removed substantial portions of it, including the parts where school districts, and in some cases, certain healthcare providers, have to notify parents or guardians, family members, custodial parents or guardians. They took that part out. What the new initiative does, again, IL 26-001, is it restores the parental notification language that was taken out of the law. So it's a good thing. And again, for emphasis, I believe it would have cleared up some of the ambiguity, some of the gray area that this school superintendent in Longview will undoubtedly claim she was caught between in breaking the mandatory reporter laws. Of course, IL 26-001 is only one of several initiatives we'll be considering this year. Another one that's guaranteed already to be on the November ballot is the initiative that will protect girls' sports, that will say boys cannot play in girls' sports in the state of Washington. That is also a matter of some current interest, with a number of boys participating in girls' sports, particularly at the junior high and high school level. And then, there are a couple other initiatives out gathering signatures right now that, if they get enough signatures in a relatively short time window, they may also be on the November ballot. The two most prominent of those are our voter ID initiative that would require proof of citizenship, require voters to provide identification when they register to vote. Not each time you vote, but when you register to vote, you would have to show some ID proving you're a citizen and a legal voter. And then the other gathering signatures right now is the initiative that would repeal the recently passed state income tax. That state income tax, of course, has not taken effect yet, but this initiative would repeal it before it takes effect. The governor, of course, again, Mr. Ferguson, who's just not having a very good year this year, signed that constitutionally dubious state income tax bill into law as fast as he could. Currently, it's being challenged in the courts here in Washington. And the initiative would solve the questions once and for all by simply acknowledging the constitutional defects in the state income tax and repealing it. It is a complicated bill that would create the state income tax, 109 pages long, full of a lot of, frankly, poorly written language about how to implement a state income tax. There are some exemptions in it. The governor emphasizes that, but he doesn't like to acknowledge that everyone will have to sign new income tax return paperwork with the state of Washington, whether you're exempt or whether you pay it. And certainly the whole thing is designed to apply to every working person in Washington State very quickly. So those are the 4 initiatives. 2 are guaranteed to be on the ballot in November already. 2 might be if they get enough signatures. Again, the 2 that are guaranteed to be on the ballot: restore the Parents' Bill of Rights and protect girls' sports. Those are there already. And then the 2 that are out gathering signatures right now and will be through the end of June are requiring voter ID when you register to vote and repeal the state income tax. So as I've said all along, it's going to be a busy summer, busy fall in politics in Washington. Initiatives, lawsuits, and then of course the November elections. Today we talked about some of the initiatives. There'll be much more to talk about next week. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy Memorial Day, and I'll talk to you again soon.